And you're welcome back to Morning Express. Now, for the second leg of interviews on the program, we'll be taking a look closely at Godfatherism and party defections in the country, loyalty or strategy in politics. And joining us in the studio at this point is Dr. Mohmood Tunde Hassan, who is an allied communications practitioner with specialist bent to development communications and intellectual media. Is a member, Board of Trustee, Good Governance Group, and think tank member, Political Advantage Platform. Also, conflict mediation strategist and peace practitioner, and fellow, Institute of Conflict Resolution, Peacebuilding, and Conciliation, live here in the studio. A very good morning to you, Dr. Mohmood. It's wonderful to have you in the studio.
Thank you so much.
We were having a chit chat before, the program started, and you might want to finish off on that thought before we ask you the first question of the day.
Okay, thank you once again. The basic thing about Godfatherism in across the world.
Yeah.
Let me shock you. There's nothing wrong with it. It is just how you apply it. It depends on what is the end goal. Because as long as there are human formations and you have social groupings and you have clamor for power, you have clamor for authority, you have clamor for influence, there will always be one or two individuals whose interests will supersede others. So for you to think that Godfatherism, it's something, yes, it can be very amorphous, but it exists and you cannot do without it.
Well, certainly it exists, and you cannot do without Godfatherism. I will come back to you, and we'll narrow it down to the Nigerian context and our political scene. But before we do that, let's see if we can virtually join Dr. Paris Saro Benson, Executive Director, Journalist for Sustainable Development Initiative, and Publisher and Chief Editor-in-Chief, Port Harcourt Spectator newspaper, joining us live from Port Harcourt City. A very good morning to you, Doctor. It's wonderful to have you join us on Morning Express today.
Well, I gather Dr. Parry's connection is still buffering, and once it connects, would come to him as well. Back to you, Dr. Hassan. It's interesting to hear you create the background on the premise of either it being a good or a bad influence in the Nigerian context. Anytime you mention Godfatherism, especially within the political landscape, it's more or less overshadowed by the concept of having a mentor, one who brings you up through the ropes and you learn the rope from them. But in terms of the aspects of influencing who takes up the saddle after you step out of office and how much of a liberty they have to take their own decisions, I believe that's where most Nigerians have an eyebrow raised when you mention Godfatherism. Noting this, would you still maintain your stance on its positive or negative influence in how it shapes the leaders who become successors of their predecessors?
You see the way Nigerians have approached Godfatherism. It's because of our sociology. We're a society that moralizes about everything. There's nothing wrong with that. You see, Godfatherism in the context of politics, except we're in denial and want to deceive ourselves, will be there, has always been there, and you cannot do without it. It is always there. In the context of Nigeria, what is creating the issue basically is because politics in Nigeria is transactional. It is mercantile. It's there's this client and patron arrangement where the larger society, all of us, you and I, were basically clients, and then you have patrons. There's nothing wrong with Godfatherism. I think one of the major problem we've had is the influence of framing, media framing basically. And media framing is also a function of political manipulation. You and I, we're within a media space. Yeah. I've always argued that media power is a myth. Those who pull the strings are actually those who own and run those media organizations. Those whose faces you see, whose voices you hear, are basically voices and faces. The actual power belong to those who pull the strings, and those who pull the strings are never seen. Now, they are the ones who frame, for instance, I'm sure you watched the movie Godfather.
The cartel movie.
The cartel movie. Now, that kind of framing did a lot to rubbish the whole essence or concept of Godfatherism, because it laced on it some kind of criminal toga. There's so much criminality around it. There's people who are crafty, people who can do anything to get whatever they want. So that kind of framing has succeeded in creating a perception of demonized Godfatherism. But you cannot do without it. You cannot escape it within the political space, because politics is about what? It's about context for influence, context for authority, context for power. And wherever you see a context, wherever there's a contestation for power, there's contestation for influence. A superior interest will subdue others.
Now let's pick it up from superior interest, because it's all about a game of interest.
Yes, it's a game.
Yeah, and whilst the electorates head to the poll to elect their leaders, they believe they have a more superior interest, especially in terms of the numbers that count.
So sorry, let me cut in there. That is a fallacy. There's never, you keep hearing people's power. It's a fallacy.
Why so?
There has never been a point. Take the American system, where we are also copying from. The popular vote has never put a man in the White House. Never. You have popular vote, then you have those collegiate system, where a few members of the elite bracket ultimately determine who gets into the White House. And it's the same across the world. You go to the UK system, it's the same thing. You go basically in Asia, where they're still monarchical. To a large extent, it is dynastic. You have family influences. The bulk of Europe, Western Europe, forget about Western liberal democracy. It is still influenced by elements who are rooted with a family tradition.
And I kind of agree with you, because even when you look at it under the party system, party primaries would definitely choose whichever candidates will bear the flag of the party. But what the issue I have with it as a person, not that my opinion would sway your thoughts, is endorsements. Now we have a man in power as governor. He's about to step out. He endorses a candidate to take after him. And this eventually plays a role in who emerges as the flag bearer for the party, regardless of what the popular opinion, and I believe what we are trying to say is. Do you think that this tradition or custom, as it were, within political parties in Nigeria is begging for independent candidacy to come into the say if we need to have balance?
You see, I'm glad you used the word custom, because it's been there. Post-colonial, post-independent Nigeria, independent Nigeria, from the 60s through time, it has always been there. It has always been there. Endorsements. You have some elements who, by virtue of their place or status in society, either by virtue of their family background or the material wealth, no matter how they got it, have had some kind of advantage over others. It has always been there. Take the old Western region. If you were not in tune with the thinking of Awolowo, you never got anything. Same thing, the Gamji consciousness in northern Nigeria. It is still playing out till today. A lot of people.
Should we also take present-day Lagos as a
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. I read, I think about a month ago, this contestation about whose status is superior or bigger at the moment, Awolowo's status or Asiwaju's status. And some element, I think, within the NNPP said no. It's like comparing a Beetle and a Ferrari.
Now, talking about the NNPP, it has received quite a huge blow recently, which I am sure you are aware of. We will come back to you to get your thoughts on that. It appears that the red cap is, losing popularity in Kano State and across the country. But let's see if we can have Dr. Parry Saro Benson join us at this moment. I earlier mentioned that he is the Executive Director, Journalist for Sustainable Development Initiative, and publisher, editor-in-chief, Port Harcourt Spectator newspaper. Now, Dr. Parry is joining us from the city of Port Harcourt. Hello and a very good morning to you, Doctor. It's wonderful to have you join us today.
It almost seems as though Dr. Parry's connection is not stable enough to have his visuals come on screen. But whilst we have it sorted out from the back end, we would have him join in from Port Harcourt. Now back to the NNPP, because it was setting the conversation for where parties play a role in shaping these ideologies that we band about in the political landscape. Just to pick it up from my colleague's question, then I'll come back to mine.
Okay. I'm not sure I really want to talk about NNPP. Maybe I should just expand the scope.
Okay.
In the sense that when you talk party politics in this country, tell me, how different are they? Which party is actually driven by ideology? Which party is driven by principles? They have their manifesto. Have they kept faith with that manifesto? You have, even in terms of internal democracy, we've had issues with internal democracy through time. For the 25 years that we've been running this Fourth Republic, from day one till today, we've had issues with internal democracy. Look at what is happening with just concluded, we're off season now, elections are done with.
Yes.
Look at what happened with the local government elections.
Yes.
Across the country, it was clean sweep for the party of the governor of that state.
Or the party that the governor has decided to move
move
his people
with.
to.
That's it. Now, if you once you look at the structure of politicking in this country and you relate it with the whole concept of Godfatherism and this whole issue of people moving from one party or the other, and whether the party supremacy holds sway in this country, it will not, because, like I said earlier on, politics in Nigeria, and that dovetails to governance, is mercantile. It's about patronage. Whoever has the capacity to patronize carries the day. And patronage that capacity is determined by what? Relationship currency. Let's even look at relationship currency. Look at the network of affiliates that you have. What can you bring to the table to blackmail? What can you bring to the table as your bargaining chip? The people you have in your villages who have been pauperized, of course, you know that we've even weaponized poverty in this country. We've weaponized ignorance in this country. We've weaponized illiteracy. We've weaponized desperation. So a lot of the people, let's take the youth bracket. Today, Nigeria has we're just second in number to South Africa. 34% youth unemployment. And it's growing. The band of those walking the street without jobs to do, without hope for the next day, is expanding.
Even within this larger bracket, you could still divide them into
certain
educated and uneducated, unemployed individuals.
Even those that are educated are pawns on the chessboard. You just mentioned mentorship a while ago. If you look at the ideals of mentorship, it's character building. Essentially, it's for character building and for goal setting and for target achievement. But how do we mentor people here? We mentor them along the path of criminality. Whoever is the strongest in terms of thuggery gets the call. Whoever can do the dirty job for the man who is pulling the string is one who has been properly mentored. You come out as a mentee to the extent that you excel as a mentee, to the extent that you can do the dirty job. You are not an excellent mentee by virtue of the character that has been built in you by a man who is even characterless in the first place. You don't give what you don't have. So through time, post-independence till date, you've had elements who have held the reign of power, with very few exceptions, that have lacked character, that have lacked principle. And that dovetails into the political parties they run. So you have political parties that are in this country. How many do we have? I've even lost count. But What is the difference between all of them?
In terms of ideology.
In terms of ideology.
Now, Doctor, let's revisit.
In terms of structure of operation.
Let's revisit the topic of local government autonomy.
Yes.
And, the news this morning that the AGF is about to enforce, the local government autonomy across states. And before now, there has been that little undertone where governors feel like this is not really their decision, but a superimposition also, of this autonomy on them by the federal government. Now, that is on one hand. Another debate is that the state governors who have wholeheartedly embraced the local government autonomy did so because they know that the local government council chairmen are already in their pockets. So no matter the disbursement of funds by the federal government to the local government coffers, it will indirectly still come back to them. Is that the case?
No. Your guess is as good as mine. But let me pick it from the point you started with.
Okay.
The effort to enforce. I think it's very shameful. It's very shameful that we are at a point in this country where you have a constitutional provision that everybody, one way or the other, has bought into. We have 3 tiers of government, and each of these tiers, levels of government are, in principle, autonomous. Why would you need an extra legal, extra administrative measure to enforce a constitutional provision that all of us are bought into? Why would you need the AGF? Yes, and the constitution that binds all. And it's the ground norm. We all accept that nothing supersedes the Constitution, except maybe our belief in the Almighty. So why would you need an extra administrative mechanism, including threat and sanction, to enforce it? I think the political class in this country, across board, through the line, should be ashamed of itself. We have the majority of our people in the the rural areas. Let me give you something that is so painful.
Okay.
In this country, we say 78% of Nigerians, we are an agrarian nation. 78% of Nigerians run agriculture. Yet, an equal percentage, between 75 and 78% of Nigerians are unable to get 3 square meals a day. Isn't that a shame? You have. I went to a place some time back called Yergalma. That's somewhere in Zamfara state. You remember the lead poisoning some time ago?
Which is now being discovered in Ebonyi State.
Yes.
All of that, Ebonyi, Taraba.
I got into that place.
Yeah.
And I saw what a contraption called a dispensary, built with mud, with a clay pot, I still remember that picture in my head, with 4 empty cartons of expired drugs.
A dispensary.
A dispensary. And right in front of that dispensary was a camel. And lead poisoning was killing children under 5. And at the time we were there, the cemetery, the old cemetery, was filled up that they had to relocate to another one. And what did it take? We were looking for the local government chairman. He was nowhere to be found. It took some Americans and some Germans and some Belgian sociologists or whatever, environmentalists, to come say we need to evacuate 3 meters deep and to take to another location, evacuate the sand, excavate the sand, and take to another location. Children are dying. There's a gentleman who was part of the team. He works with Shika, that's ABU Teaching Hospital. My interaction subsequently with him, he told me that those survivors of that incident,
the lead poison.
Yes, the lead poison, will never be able to bear children even as they have survived. Now, this is the local government. A lot of people are going through that groveling situation. I went to a place in Nasarawa, what's the name of the place? Ihumana. And I saw able-bodied men, totally rendered useless.
In what sense?
Because they had worms coming out of their body.
Much like exposure to radioaction.
No, guinea worm, because of simple sanitary situation. They have so much guinea, it's totally guinea worm infested. You see women breastfeeding with worms sticking out of their breasts. This is Nigeria.
And these are case studies depicting the
the situation in the local government. I went to, we have two millennium villages in Africa. One is in Nigeria. The other one is in Kenya. The one in Nigeria is at Bampeda, somewhere in Katsina. We traveled to that place, and it's with paved road and everything is there. And we stopped to ask this woman, who was the president of Nigeria? Guess what? No, they said Shehu Shagari.
They're stuck in the past.
Yes, stuck in the past. They totally cut off.
Well,
I just so that you have the graphic picture.
We'll come back to this. Just hold your
government.
thoughts. Let's see if we can re-establish connection with Port Harcourt and get our second guest to join the conversation, Chijoke.
Well, Dr. Paris Sarah Benson is joining us live from the city of Port Harcourt. Let's see if we can have Dr. Parry react to some of these issues that we've been having, conversations with Dr. Hassan here. Hello and good morning to you, Dr. Parry. It's wonderful to have you join us on Morning Express.
Hello, Dr. Benson. Can you hear us?
Well, if you can hear us, it's coming from the angle of Godfatherism in the country and the incessant level of defections from the Labour Party, from the NNPP, which has suffered the most recent and hugest blow in the Nigerian political landscape recently. What do you make of all these defections, and how much of an impact is Godfatherism having on our political life as a nation? Well, seems to have a little bit of trouble there with the connection. Hello, Dr. Benson. Did you get my question?
Yes, I'm with you.
Fantastic. Did you get my question?
Yes, I got your question, and I'm glad that I'm part of this panel this morning.
Oh.
You see, listening to the gentleman in your studio tells you exactly the picture of what Nigeria is right now, and part of it is caused by Godfatherism. Because somebody in power is not responsible to the people. He doesn't care. Because he knows that he can always get his godfather to answer for him. I mean, why would a local government, listen to the gentleman in your studio, why would a local government chairman, that particular local government where wombs were coming from the breast of a mother, it has a local government chairman who may have been planted on the people by his godfather. And because he's not responsible to the people, but responsible to his godfather, he doesn't care. That morning, while those women were feeding children and breast coming out, he probably was seated somewhere in an air-conditioned room and would not even have the courtesy to pay them a visit, to say this is what is going on. So the pains that Nigerians are going through is the pains of the effect of Godfatherism. Everybody points hands at the president. Nobody's pointing hand at the local government chairman, at the councillor. And nobody is bothered about it. My brother, the solution to what you are seeing is a holistic repair of Nigeria.
Dr. Benson.
From the grassroots.
Dr. Benson, quite appalling is the situation which you have reiterated. Dr. Hassan had earlier talked about all the political class being almost cut from the same cloth, stating that there is a lack of distinct ideology or structure amongst the parties. At some points, people feel like they could just jump off the back of whatever party to win the next election, not minding what their manifestos promise these people. And when they get there, they renege on promises. And we see them evident in this local government that we have talked about on the program this morning. When you talk about this holistic repair, is it with beginning to have ideologies? How do you prefer the solution to repairing our political landscape?
Beginning from the ideologies, have you taken time to listening to some of the candidates in the last 2023 election? Did you try to see their manifesto? Some of them do not have one. They copy, they paste. They look at what this other person is doing and try to copy something from there. I'm a media practitioner, and I want to tell you categorically that some of them, they just go to the media, pick sentence from this and copy to the other one and make it a manifesto. Why? Because most of them were not even prepared. I've listened to some candidates said, or now in position said, if they had known that they will win so election or a position, they ought to have been prepared like 20 years earlier. They were not. They were planted by their godfathers. And they had no ideology or no vision of their own. So this thing boils back to ideologies. It's not there. My brother, after this show, I put it to you. Just find your time, go to APC, go to PDP, go to LP, go to the other P. Pick their constitutions or whatever they have and try to study what they call ideologies. It will pain you to your bone marrows. And that tells me that this repair I talk about not only will start with the people, they will also go to INEC. And until this is done, you will see this jumping will also continue from place to place because they don't care.
Now talking about the parties, talking about the parties in question, the People's Democratic Party (PDP), as it were, is having some serious issues in terms of its internal structure. Now we're hearing that even secretariats are worried following the resumption of activity today. It's almost like a breakdown in their unit, and one of the major headlines on the leadership newspaper is that even amongst the 5 functional PDP governors we have, they might defect ahead of 2027. What's your thoughts of the situation within the PDP, and would this constitute some of the major issues where people are calling for a mega party for Nigerians to have more choices going into 2027?
Certainly, a mega party will give us a broad base for people to choose. It will give us a broad base for people to make up their mind. Because right now, from what you have said and from the leadership newspaper this morning, you can tell that all is not well. Why? Everybody has got his own individual thing. Nobody is thinking of the holistic thing that concerns everybody. Because when it's for everybody, it will affect you, it will affect me, it will affect my brother, it will affect my sister. So it is not well with the parties at all. And it starts now. If something better than what we are experiencing will happen in 2027, it starts now.
And in relation to local government council chairmen and the state governors who have some state governors who have continually denied to fully implement the local government autonomy granted to these LGAs by the Supreme Court. Now, in the perfect case study would be the River State governor who isn't really against it, but has somehow been able to find a way to sweep through all the local government councils in the state and moved his men to a particular political party where, even though they are not part of the PDP, but it appears they are now working for the PDP from another political party. Is the local government autonomy really in its full implementation across the country? And why do you think that the AGF really needs to enforce an already constitutionally agreed order made by the Supreme Court?
The AGF need to enforce it immediately because, as you can see, they are not implementing it because in Nigeria we have laws, but the problem in our country is implementation of the laws. So for me, I support the AGF to do a holistic drive to ensure that this particular local government autonomy is being implemented to the letter. Because if that is not done, like you have mentioned, it's not just in Rivers State, it's all over the country. I mean, we all know we live here. This is our country. We have no other place if you japa and japa, you will come back because you get there and what you are seeing. You get there and what you are seeing is
Dr. Benson,
not what you expected.
Dr. Benson,
Yes,
Dr. Hassan in the studio here was actually, reacting a certain way when you said that the AGF must or needs to enforce the local government autonomy granted to these councils. Doctor, do you care to respond to him? Because you had a varying opinion.
Yes, I don't have a problem with what the AGM has said. What I have problem fundamentally with is the weaknesses that we have, institutional weaknesses that we have. Before the gentleman that is AGF today, we had AGFs, so several of them. And while those gentlemen or ladies held sway, we also had the issues with local government autonomy. So, are we saying that when this AGM leaves and the next one that takes over is not predisposed as the current AGF and he overturns the decision of this AGF, is okay? Without the AGF, can't the law take its course? Can't the constitutional order be allowed to breathe, to take its course? We have a constitutional order. That order says the local government is an autonomous tier of government. Why do we need to beg governors?
Financially and administratively.
Yes, or in whatever ramification. Why do we need to kowtow to the whims and caprices of governors? Why do we need to get the governors, beg them to allow it happen? This thing has been going on for more than 15 years. I remember under in the immediate past President Buhari,
yes,
the local government autonomy thing was among the 22 constitutional amendment that was sought, which the governors stood against, trampled on it. So for how long would we continue to hinge the fate of this country on the attitude, the interests, to a very large extent, on wholly interests of people who are supposed to be serving serving us?
Quite a very pertinent question you have asked here,
how long will you continue to kowtow to them?
I'm sure you must have listened to Dr. Hassan's take as to why he is not particularly disposed to that statement made by the AGF of having to enforce an already constitutionally agreed arrangement. What do you have to say about this?
Because in our country, nothing works without a force.
It's sad. Really sad. Really sad.
Now, just to agree on one thing, which Dr. Hassan reiterated, is the role of the rule of law. And River State continues to become a case study in this when we talk about defections. Now, the State House of Assembly has become more of a talking point over the last few years. And whilst the River State governor went ahead to present the 2025 budget to a 4-member State House of Assembly, people continue to question what the law does in keeping with defections and how such State House of Assemblies are to move forward with their business. I don't know if you have any postulations as to how this would work going forward, because if this is not corrected now, I bet you in some coming years, people will point to River State and say, it happened there, and so we can't defect, and it doesn't change anything.
Going forward, all we need is having an institution that we can believe in. If we believe in our judiciary system and they say a thing and it is the people's agreement, it will work. All this hulabaloo right now is because one court is saying this, the other court is saying the other. So until we believe in our institutions, all those things will stop. And things will not begin to work. But you have a country where government is making building houses for our judicial officers and doing all manner of things. And so how do you think you'll be able to separate that from whatever that will be the outcome? Because the problem right now is the outcome. And until the outcome of our judicial system is agreed by all of us and the institution is what we believe, the problem will continue. As long as we believe in the institution, it will stop. But if we don't believe and things are going the way it is, then my brother.
Now,
it's a
now,
long
Dr.
way.
Benson, Dr. Benson,
Oh, yes.
stay with us on this conversation. Let's just get Dr. Hassan's thoughts as well. Remember, we're all talking about the role of Godfatherism, defections, and how it shapes the political landscape in terms of loyalty. He's talked about the fact that we need strong institutions, much like you had talked about. But let's come to another case study that has showed how Godfatherism somehow subverts the rule of law. I'll bring us to the Kogi State situation. Governor Dodo, his successor, Yahaya Bello. The role of the EFCC, the intervention of Governor Dodo, who has immunity. Governor Yahaya Bello left the office not longer having immunity, but we saw the role of Godfatherism in intervening even when an institution of government was to take its course. When we have antecedents like this set, for this conversation's sake, how would you approach how would you prefer solutions to such a situation?
You see, the Kogi State thing is such a laughable thing. Is a poster case of how not to allow governance to degenerate. The level to which you should not allow misgovernance to degenerate. Yes, Ododo had when he did it, and he still has immunity. That's a constitutional provision. But Yabelo lost immunity the moment he stepped out of office. Yes. Now, for a person who has immunity to now allow the space for immunity to accommodate criminality, it's a different thing. Because at the point he allowed that, Yabelo was a fugitive. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. By the laws of this country, he was at that point a fugitive. And there's no law that is absolute. There's no law that is absolute. Where Ododo will now misuse his immunity to shield criminality, that's where I said that's the level to which misgovernance has descended in this country. Unfortunately, Nigerians just watch. And day by day, institutions in this country, we have them, but they get weakened by the second. Man after man, officer after officer, the institutions, as you come in and go out, you leave the institution weaker. And we have cumulative weaknesses, weakening, so to speak, of our institutions, to the point that even godfathers, the structure, and like I said at the beginning, you cannot do without godfathers. They are inherent, they are embedded in within every political space. Now, it is the manner in which you carry it on, whether it is anti-people or it's something that can propel progress. That's a different thing. Outside this country, I'm sure before this program, I mentioned the Black Rock. You may have heard of the Black Rock. They influence government across the world. At the last reading, they have a budget of well over $11 trillion to influence government across the world. Everywhere you have them, they work in very stealth mode. I mean, covered, underground, and set the basis. Sometimes as a survival strategy, as a renewal strategy. We've seen it at play in the United States. When the system is derailing, those who are working underground find a way to get it back on steam. It was more or less the same thing that brought Obama in. And when they were done with fixing it, they got him out. And now Trump is back in. It has always been played. It's enlightened self-interest. Unfortunately, it's the structure of Godfatherism, which is also dovetailing into this nonsense of defection. Defections. Yeah, it's because we do not have an elite class that engages in deep thinking, not even to talk of acting wisely. But for you to get to a point where you have an elite class that even if it is enlightened self-interest, it must be in such a way that it maintains the existential reality of society, such that you do not sacrifice your future because of current gain. That's what we have with our godfathers. And that's where you have even these defections. Don't forget that. Defection is within their right. It's within their fundamental human right to association. So if I want to defect, so what? But it's possible to defect. We've even given it a fancy name. It's cross-carpeting. You say he's porting. He's just ported to another base. You port from one point to the other point, not because there's something substantially different from where you're coming from, or you're going to meet anything substantially where you are.
Comrade Adams Oshomele used something, and I think that's at that point we invite Dr. Benson to join the conversation.
Yes.
He says, if you come over to a certain party, I don't want to name the party, your sins are forgiven.
Yeah, I mean, let's name it. If you come over to APC, your sins are forgiven.
Dr. Benson, Dr. Hassan has opined that we cannot read our political landscape of Godfatherism. But now, citing the Kogi State's case scenario and moving forward, do you think that this antecedents would also somewhat derail the ideologies which you said are necessary for the reformation, or even the structures within party that should birth the progress on which people who vote certain parties into power hope for a better tomorrow?
For me, I'm not against Godfatherism. My problem is its implementation and how it works. Because you see, take it or leave it, Godfatherism is more like a mentor and a mentee. A young man is understudying somebody, and after some time, he decided to throw him up for a position in government or whatsoever. So me as a person, I'm not against it. But you see, the way and manner in which the actions of the mentee or now the person, the son, will now imply upon the people, that's where the problem is. Because looking at what Dr. Hassan said about the case of Kogi State. Now, okay, Yaya Bello has mentored Ododo, and now Ododo is now trying to shield his mentor from what affects the people. Because you are talking about the people. I mean, it's unheard of that a government agency empowered by law will be stopped from executing justice. That is unheard of in anywhere except in Nigeria. So I'm not against it, but the way it's been done, that's the approach. And like I said earlier, this issue of sporting or cross-carpeting will continue until there is a strong ideologies in some of in our political party system. That's when it will stop. Because if the ideology of party A does not tally with your own, there's no way you will cross carpet. In the case here in Rivers State, as we are reading every day in the media, the same people who defected, they now say they never defected. It's now before the court. So how do you?
Well, Dr. Benson, let's also revisit. Dr. Benson.
In the case of until can you hear me?
Yes, carry on, please. Just finish your point.
Oh, okay, so in summary, like I said, I'm not against Godfatherism, but the way it is being handled when the son comes into power is what I'm against. And I'm re-echoing the point of Dr. Hassan, where the mentee is trying to shade the mentor from what affects Nigeria, because the money the mentor is being accused of is the money that belongs to the people, not the money that belongs to the mentor or the mentee. That's where I have a problem.
Quite a fantastic take there, Dr. Benson. But still talking about mentors and mentees. It appears that there are about 774 local government mentees of 36 state governors across the nation. And one argument that many persons have had concerning the local government autonomy is the fact that even if these monies are disbursed directly into the coffers of the LGAs or the local government councils, it will still find a way to get back into the pockets of these mentors who have positioned their mentees in at the helm of affairs in local government councils, thereby defeating the main purpose of this administrative and financial autonomy granted to these LGs. Is that the picture we are looking at the moment?
Certainly, until the people will rise up during the opportunity of election to say if candidate A is suspected to be the mentee of Mentor Z, and we said no, we know that once he gets into power, he will be obedient to his mentor. Therefore, let us have an alternative until the people will have this psyche, this turnaround in their reasoning. It will continue, because the moment that his mentee goes into power, my brother, it will still continue.
Now,
and that is why I said, if the AGM will do what is right, but like Dr. Hassan said, if the person leaves power, will the person coming in, will he continue? And that boils back to, do we believe in our constitution? Because he asked a question there. Do we need to enforce what is in our constitution? Yes, we need to enforce it. And that's my line of take. That's my take.
now we have a little less than 10 minutes to wrap up. I'd like for us to just discuss one of the new ideologies in line with the Constitution Amendment and an alternative, much like you're calling for Nigerians who head to the polls. Dr. Hassan, it's on the conversations for independence candidacy. Do you think Nigeria is ripe with the talks of mega parties as well? What's one of the alternatives you would suggest that is ripe at a time like this for Nigerians to explore in terms of having better options at who to elect?
I think that it's really high time that we move away from we move from the point of procrastination to a point of actual engagement with respect to the thorny question of independent candidacy. I think it's high time we really give a thought and consideration to that and give a very strong push for it. The civil society, we need if you rely on, it's going to be class suicide if you rely on the present drivers of the polity to actualize that. It may not work. But I think Nigeria is right for it. One, Nigeria is not lacking in brilliant minds. Anywhere around the world, we have them. They go there and drive development all over the world. I remember listening to Professor Lumumba some time ago. If you go anywhere, no, it was even a Chinese man that said that. Anywhere you go to, you don't see a Nigeria, please walk away from that place. So we have them. In terms of our intellectual prowess, I think we've gotten to that point where individuals can come in and drive their own agenda to the betterment of our society. Mega party, what's new about it? APC, at a point, became APC because it also that process of a mega party, merger of I think it was a CPC then and ANPP and APP. Yes, in fact, that's even what the APC is. It is APGA, a little bit of APGA, a little bit of APC. CPC, a little bit of ANPP, and I think APP. So it was mega, just for the optics. And is there any difference between now we're talking about a new formation, a new mega party, and then you find you're pulling elements
from this other party,
and not just let's categorize these elements. Disgruntled elements, aggrieved elements, now coming together, pulled together, not because of any the purity of interest,
but just to prove a point,
because they are aggrieved.
Well, Dr. Benson, to get your final thoughts.
So I agree. We are ready for independent candidacy.
Well, we are ready for independent candidacy is the words of Dr. Hassan here. But to get your final thoughts before we let you go, we know how expensive elections are in Nigeria. Yes, morally and intellectually and otherwise, we might be ready for independent candidacy, but financially, can an individual run and contest for a high-ranking political office in the country and still win? Is it possible, in your opinion?
It's just not possible. It's not possible because the moment an independent candidate comes out and it's canvassing to lead in any leadership position, the first thing that will come to the mind of the opposition, those who don't believe in it, is tribal sentiment, religious sentiment, and all manner of sentiments. And because the person does not come from so and so area, and then a party is throwing up that, because remember, whether you like it or right or not, the current political system we have, they try to throw up persons in order to suit the agitation and aspiration of some sector of Nigeria. Of course, they will buy into it. So where would the independent candidate come from? And how do you think that it doesn't matter the amount of money he has and the support base? I do not think that right now Nigeria is ripe for independent candidacy.
You see,
I think
my take on that
should demand from our leaders is and how to fight
okay.
corruption, because corruption
Dr. Benson,
refused.
Dr. Benson, maybe I should just chip in there. You see, Dr. Benson, my take in that is that the media, for instance, and the major actors, the stakeholders within the civil space, are the ones who are perpetrating this. Who are deepening this perception that we draw politics on primordial lines. I mean, we can't do away with this so-called, I even hate the word tribe, because tribe means we're calling ourselves animals. I mean, if you really study the epistemology of this word tribe, for instance, you never go to anywhere across Europe. The whole of Europe is an ethnic society, but they never use, have you heard English tribe, French tribe, German tribe?
Certainly.
Because the word tribe basically is a reference to a band of animals. So, but that's for another conversation.
Okay.
So this narrative of, yes, there's money in politics, but you can sway all of that when we, for instance, the media become part of the groundswell of changing the narrative.
The narrative.
Well, time, I'm afraid, would
Yes.
not permit for us to go any further, but I must thank you, Dr. Hassan. Dr. Benson as well, we appreciate you from Port Harcourt for joining in and sharing your thoughts on the program. We do say thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Anytime, any day, I'll be here.